everyone, and welcome to this episode of In Your Ward. In today's episode, we'll be heading to Springfield Farms and Vergers Villeneuve in order to talk directly to the owners about how agriculture has been impacted by climate change. From unpredictable weather patterns to the spread of pests and disease, growing crops has become more challenging than ever. In this interview, they'll share with us real examples from their own farmlands and share with us what they've done to adapt to these challenges. To start today's interview, could you tell us what services Springfield Farm offers?
We'd be delighted to tell you the services. We like to call ourselves an environmental farm oasis. And that means that when someone arrives as a guest or looking for some farm produce, they're actually entering what we would say is a different style of agritourism. We have a yurt on site that rents out through Airbnb, but we also have a disc golf course, an 18-hole disc golf course, and it's the only one in our region. Our region's very vast, and that started in 2022. And then annually we have a field and feast, which allows us to work with chefs. We have chefs that have come in the past, a Michelin star chef from Ireland through the ambassador to Canada, the Irish ambassador. But we've also worked with top Indigenous chefs who are from Comic-Con, Akwesasne, Mohawk territory, and we've been very fortunate that they sell out. People are very interested in that sort of field-to-table experience that's allowing them to have local food.
Here, our name is the Vergers Villeneuve and Blueberry Farm. Mm-hmm. We're basically a fruit farm where you can come and pick your own. We have blueberries, raspberries, and cherries that you can pick in July, for which we're open today. It's our end of season. But we also have apples, pears, and grapes at the end of August. Mm-hmm. And now we have it's a vegetable. We now have rhubarb that you can also pick.
We grow a little bit of everything. Mostly we grow oats and we grow garlic. And we have some apple trees in the front that Eleanor's been trying to produce apples out of. They're coming along slowly. Oh, your potatoes.
Potatoes. Hey, we couldn't be proud Irish people without doing the potatoes.
And what type of climate do these plants need to grow?
Right now we have a good climate for that. Mm-hmm. But things are changing. The climate is getting warmer, so they're starting to suffer.
It's something that I think every farmer in this region, your family, many of our neighbors are facing. What would be, I think, is a zone 4, and it normally is a very lovely sort of May to October type season. But we're now faced with a very much a changing one. We've got our maple syrup, and in fact in February we all here in Canada, or at least in Ontario for sure, experienced a very mild, it was 18 plus degrees. So I was out pruning. I can't remember what you were doing. There was activities that normally you would not be able to do. We only got out on snowshoes twice here on the farm. So all of a sudden we're faced with what can we grow? And last year we lost our entire, it wasn't that we lost the garlic, but we could not sell it because of mildew. And that again was too much rain. It was almost like every day was rain with a little sunshine. So the predictability of farming is gone. And that's what we're facing.
And how has climate change affected your crops here?
Here it's mostly excessive changes. For example, this year is very warm, actually very hot and rainy. Mm-hmm. So that forces the plant to grow a lot faster than normal. Oh. And instead of ripening and being okay, they'll ripen and rot. Mm-hmm. So we have to, so it shortens the season to harvest. And also because there's a lot of rain, last year we have a field of raspberries. Mm-hmm. And the raspberries, even though the field is rain, a lot of the raspberries drown, way too much water. Mm-hmm. So we'll probably have to relocate the raspberries because there's nothing else we could do. Yeah. And probably the biggest thing is the wind. The wind now, there's always wind all day long. Very harsh winds. Mm-hmm. We were affected by the derecho 2 years ago. Mm. That went through here, and we lost probably 15, 20 trees in the orchard but a whole slew of them in the forest.
We live in hope, and that's the thing. The biggest thing is the fact that every year you hope this year is going to be better, and that I think is the optimist is a farmer. But climate change has definitely caused us a lot of issues. For my husband, his bees. So every year we're losing his hives. It's either mites, it can be the environment change. So this year he's lost a hive. Why? Because it was too mild and the bees were almost tricked into coming out. So in February, all of a sudden there was like carnage on the snow, and it was very distressing. I mean, they're living creatures and they provided this beautiful golden honey, and yet we can't protect them. So I think it's this lack of control over Mother Nature that makes it very stressful. Oats. Did we make money last year?
Nope.
No. Why? Because we're organic. That's one reason. So what does that mean? It means the weeds, because it rained, got ahead, and the oats sacrificed, they never grew, and we ended up really not having a great crop. I think people then don't realize, so basically that's no money. We just spent and we had no profit. We were not alone. It was very difficult this year to source oat seeds. And so I think that's going to be the other thing. Out of climate change, how many different crops are going to suffer, as possibly you've been trying to ask?
Yeah.
And at the same time, what does that mean on your food plate? One, if you lose small farms, what are you losing? You're losing variety of food production, the pivoting to food production. Then you're going to lose, obviously, the sort of, I think, things that we took for granted, whether it is honey, whether it is maple syrup, It was a good season this year, but I think last year was not as good, So in Vermont, they're talking about actually having maple trees almost because of the mild climate. They're not going to get the necessary nice higher temperatures in the day, the cold at night. So,
What have you guys been doing to adapt to this climate change?
We're changing products that we produce, and we're increasing the number of fruit and things we grow. So if something is affected by one year, then we have the other ones to rely on. A good example is the surprising frost that we get in May. Last year we lost the pears for the first frost, the apples on the second frost in the month, and the grapes at the end of the month. Here we do a lot of wines also with all of our fruit.
Yeah.
So this helps us to have an income at the time of the year, but we're also changing the produce that we're using to make wine. See, last year we lost all of our pears, so now we're relying on, for example, dandelion. Nothing kills dandelion, so we're making dandelion wine. We're moving also to rhubarb, because rhubarb is the same. We're moving to rhubarb wine, garlic scape wine. And this year we'll probably introduce the tomato.
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes.
That's an interesting choice.
That's a different choice. We'll experiment till we find something that works well.
Additionally, it's the fact that when you look at our farm, we could show you 10 years ago we purchased this farm, and the trees at the front when you enter, a lot of the trees along our what's called a windbreak along the Baudette River were all lush. And now we're faced with almost total destruction, death. The storms that we've been having, the high winds, you get them in your area, tornadoes. I just heard this afternoon, Ontario is now becoming more of a tornado destination than Saskatchewan, the prairies. And so that has transformed how we deal with climate change. We are urgently using our time to plant trees.
That's right.
And you're taking down trees and harvesting, and yes, you can make some income, but that's not the income you want to be making. That's not how you want to spend your time. So there's a cost to climate change that's tangible, and that is spending time rebuilding windbreaks that are probably 100, if not more, years old. Trees. It's strange when you think about, like, when we first arrived here, there was a lot more tree coverage. The cost of land is so expensive. So maybe an acre was $5,000 or so 10 years ago. In our region, we're talking 20, sometimes 30,000 on the high end. Well, if that's the case, and like us, we have 62 acres of bush or forest, it's a lot easier to go and clear cut your bush than it is
Yeah.
to go and buy.
Buy new land.
Yeah. So the pressure is on to get more agricultural land, to be able to produce more, and yet we're battling nature, Mother Nature, who's obviously unhappy with how we've been treating her.
It's going to be really hard. We'll probably have to adapt to plant more things that are better in a warmer climate. You see, like apples, and there's a few things we have here, like maple syrup is really adapted to this climate.
Yeah.
If it gets warmer, then means that things have to move up north. But also brings other problem. When it's warmer, you get all the bugs that we're not used to here, or
That's
disease. We have some disease that are in the trees that are now coming up north, which we never had before. Same thing with the bugs. It's you probably heard about the tick.
Yeah.
Okay, this was not an issue even 5 years ago.
Oh.
Now it's a major issue. They could not survive the winter, but now that the winters are more soft or warm, they can survive. So that's why we have ticks.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's quite a few. Like in our plants, we have issues with rose bugs and Japanese beetle. But it's
Yeah.
the same thing. It's our first year that we have Japanese beetle because it could not sustain our winter here.
The rethinking right now, coupled with climate change as a precarious economic, sort of issue, it's adding up. And then carbon tax. All right, we're small. We don't have to worry as much about the carbon tax, the fuel, et cetera. Our tractor doesn't require that. But when you're passing in rural areas, large pieces of equipment, most people don't realize that's in multi-millions of dollars of equipment on that farm to function. And the fuel. Has anyone really started to think how many tractors actually are electrical right now? Very few. And in fact, I think they're lawn tractor size. So how are you to actually, we're totally environmental. That's, as I said, we're an environmental farm oasis. We're organic. I want the environment to be hopeful for my children, my grandchildren. But on the other hand, I think there's pragmatic decisions that have to be made.
Yeah.
And that's something like we all face, Like, can we realistically ask a farmer to convert all their equipment into electrical?
Yeah.
I personally don't think so.
Is there any services that are helping you during when you guys are facing like hard times because of climate change?
Well, yeah. I mean, is it enough? And so we've been very fortunate, and Danielle can speak to one of the activities that you've coordinated. But right off the bat, Alice, which is an alternative land use, and that's been a huge organization benefiting our farm. 22 acres are in that program, and that allows us some income. But realistically, it's the EFAO, which is an Ecological Farmers Association that we belong to. So they are helping us transition into new crops like small grains, like oats. We're going to do winter wheat. That will change how we farm here and hopefully also offset what's happening out in the prairies, which is drought and sometimes too much rain. So I think our consumers out there need to start really thinking about how do we protect agricultural land? How do we protect farmers? When we're the average age and the cost of farming has gone up exponentially, you need to really think about the types, as you said, is there support? There is, but is it enough? I would argue no. I would say we're losing small farms very quickly, rapidly. I'm not going to throw a statistic, but the OFA would tell you. But I can see it around here. So maybe, I mean, certainly the other organization is the Raisin Region. So maybe if you could
so the
address
Raisin
that.
Region has given us quite a few trees. And we are rebuilding the windbreaks because, as you can see, there's a lot of trees that are dying along the river and on all the windbreaks. So we're trying to bring them back. And we're very lucky of our landscape here. We don't need to do any tile drain. Everything runs off. So that helps a little bit. And as for the support, like Eleanor was saying, I think there's a lot more organizations that are starting to listen, but they're just taking in the input for now, and we'll see what happens later.
The government is not helping in anything. The rules are way too lenient in a lot of area. For example, there's a lot of places now that they're cutting the trees, like cleaning everything.
Yeah.
So then the wind gets stronger, and there's nothing to hold the water, because the forest is a place that is like a sponge. When there's a lot of water, it will stay in the forest. Now, if there's no forest, it will just run over the ground and then clear everything.
What can people do to help support agricultures and small farmers?
We have to lobby. We have to really engage the community of farmers, not just the consumer. Yeah, we have to get people engaged. We need, as consumers, to start saying to our governments, to these bodies that look after agriculture, you've got to do more.
Yeah.
Because it's too hard.
Why do you think it's important to protect agriculture?
Well, for everybody, there's only 3 things that is essential.
Yeah.
You need to breathe, you need to drink water, and you need to eat.
Yeah.
So if you don't protect agriculture, where are we going? And right now the government is not doing very good for that.
Yeah.
Because in all those 3 areas, it's probably their worst mark in everything. There's a lot of problems with water everywhere. The same thing with the air. And all of that creates climate change.
Yeah.
Because they don't pay attention to those things.
Well, one, as you know, I mean, we rely on it as humans. We need it, and I know that's the easy one. But on the other hand, the adaptability of a small farm versus a large cash cropping conventional farm is the fact that we as a small farm can pivot. I mean, I know that's the buzzword in this generation, but we can look at, okay, there's oats this year. Well, how are they doing? Is that something? I mean, at some point you have to look at your bottom line. And I think small farms, the problem a lot of times without these supports is that they are also facing with succession planning. Recently, the big one that is the capital gains tax. So if you think about, when you go back to the cost of land, a lot of consumers will say, well, farmers are rich. You know, you've got 120 acres. You just told me how much an acre is worth, essentially. Well, that sounds great. You go to sell that now under the recent legislation budget that just came in June, well, that immediately is knocking out 66% of that profit. So now you have to pay off a lot of things, which is obviously taken into that capital gains. But what if your succession plan was that your children and yourself would retire? I don't think people realize that is right away. It's not just the bottom line of the farmer, it's the bottom line of the consumer's food on their table. And that is critical. And I don't think politicians realize what they're doing. Someone's advised them. Someone said this is a great way to get money to pay down our debt. But I think agriculture should almost be protected. It has to be. Why? If I'm looking at you as a young person, like any of my children and your children the same, why would you come into a business where right away I'm going to tell you you're not going to make money?
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important to protect agriculture.
Well, thank you so much for answering all our questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Merci, Jade.